Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacinho Tweets and at She Knows Arsenal and on Instagram at Jacinho Graham. Welcome to another episode. Today we're going to be reviewing Arsenal's triumphant win in the North London Derby 3-1. So yeah, we're going to be going through all the nitty-gritty of that, talking about the goals, kind of how the game unfolded, talk about the pressure points of the game, their penalty, our penalty, or the penalty, wait, their penalty, their red card, the red card that they got, and the goals and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you guys are tuned in, you guys are relaxed, get a drink, get something to eat. We're going to go through it all. And then there's obviously some additional news off of the back of that. When Arsenal have big wins for some reason, like a lot of news tends to come out right after that. So yeah, we will talk about it all. Make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribing to the channel. That is how the channel gets found and it grows. And yeah, I think we're just around the corner from 13,000 subscribers. So make sure you guys do that for me. I'd really appreciate it. And let me know how you guys are feeling off of the back of that win. I told you guys, I was actually really confident. Every show that I went on, I predicted a win. That we usually beat them at home. So it's kind of like a normal thing, business as usual. But there's more pressure on us than on them. They definitely played that game, and obviously you could see that there is like the media is trying to back them a little bit, and oh well, they played their game and da da da. None of that really matters. What matters for us is that we got the job done. And in a moment where I do feel like the media feel like Spurs are better than us, and we're kind of like, a team that's playing well at the moment and we're in good form, but, everything will fall apart at a certain point. I do think we handled the pressure well. It's our home. We have to beat them. We want to stay top of the table. And we have a huge game coming up against Liverpool. And I was saying this on, I think it was the Football Terrace. I said this, that, it's really important for Arsenal to get the win against Spurs before the Liverpool game, because that's the game that actually, for me, will tell me more about the mentality of this team. And this is just 3 points that we have to make sure that we get against Spurs. And we definitely did that. And I think for the most part, we played well. I think that it wasn't Arsenal's best performance. Like, it really was not Arsenal's best performance. When I rewatched it, I thought we played good, but there was definitely some moments of like, okay, that could be better. You could clean that up. But for us to not be playing like at our sparkling best and to still have the mentality and the grit and determination to get the 3 points against a difficult opponent, a rival, your biggest rival, I think shows like from a mentality side of things. Where Arsenal and Arteta are at. And I do think that this was a good litmus test for Mikel Arteta as well. There was a narrative going around that Conte had Arteta's number. I just found that to be really strange. He only really out coached him one time, and we had tons of players missing and things like that. So yeah, I thought that this was a good litmus test for the team, for Arteta, and they definitely got through it. And the weekend was so glorious after that, because when you have the early game, it's like, okay, if we win, great. If we lose, then the entire weekend is ruined. And so got to enjoy the other games that happened. I mean, the Man City Manchester United game did not disappoint. And so it was a good weekend for Arsenal. I think we can move into, this next week feeling confident and feeling like we're moving in the right direction. Let's see what you guys are saying in here. iGamer says London been red. Dwayne says North London forever. Amira says sing it, Jess. We are top of the league. Say we are top of the league. Zach 10 says Jesus will score 20 in the league. I would love that. My benchmark for Gabriel Jesus was 15 goals. And I do think that people have a misconception around how many goal scorers usually get 20 goals a season. It's a handful. It's not the norm. Most goal scorers don't get that. And so I was thinking, if he gets 5, 6, 7 assists and 15 goals, then he has 20 something goal contributions, and that's good enough for me. I know Gabriel Jesus offers a lot more than just goals to this team, but he is finishing chances at a decent rate. I think right now he has what, 6 goals so far and 3 assists? Let me just make sure. Let me look that up. And so that's really, really good. But Gabriel Jesus is somebody that scores goals when he's starting. And those statistics were out there before we bought him. And people ignored that. It was like, okay, well, he's a bench warmer. I did see some Spurs fans saying you can't really compare Son and Kane to Jesus because he was a bench warmer at Manchester City. Well, he actually has trophies. He contributed to those trophies coming to Manchester City. He's maybe 4 or 5 years younger than those two players. And if he continues to play like this for Arsenal, he will be somebody that's considered world class. So, yeah, this season so far, he has 5 goals and 3 assists in 8 matches. So, he's well, like, on course to, you know, having 20 goals this season. So, yeah, Jesus is doing a really, really good job. And again, he offers way more to Arsenal than just goals. Hightower says the narrative keeps getting broken. Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of people that are hoping that this is a false dawn for Arsenal. Arsenal have been banter FC for a very, very long time. And so you kind of want to keep the status quo. And it also was, um, we were a good kind of wall up there for other teams that weren't doing as well, but we were doing worse. So they could kind of hide behind us. Now the light is on other teams and it's not really on us. And what's funny is that I feel like now Arsenal are not going to win the league is somewhat of like a diss that people are trying to come out with. And I'm like, that's not actually a diss. Like, Arsenal not winning the league this season is not a diss. Like, I think they've come to the realization that if we continue to play this way and if we continue to show that we're not the Arsenal of last season, we will get top 4. So, yeah, the narrative is always ever shifting, the goalposts are ever moving, and that's just the reality of being Arsenal Football Club. Zach 10 says, big question, would Saliba stop Holland? I don't know. That's a big question. I am happy that the Man City game has been moved. I do think that that would have been one too many really difficult games in a small amount of time. Watching Holland play and watching Man City play, I do think that, again, like, for a team that is confident and is willing to take some risks, they have frailties at the back, but what that does is it leaves you exposed to Holland, and nobody wants to be exposed to Holland. So it's just a matter of, do you rate your whatever you're going to do enough to open yourself up to that type of threat? And we'll see where we're at when we play them. I do think watching them against Manchester United was maybe sobering for some Arsenal fans. I do think some people may have been getting carried away, thinking that Arsenal are close to Man City or something. We may be the best team after Manchester City, but we're not on their level. Like, it's just not, we're not quite there. They're just on a completely different level. The types of players that they have, the muscle memory that they have to know how to win, to know how to turn up the gears, to know when to slow things down, to know, like, and they have those world-class talents that are in 27, 28, 29 years old. So, yeah, we're nowhere near them, but we will see. We will see. So there's about 100 of you guys in here right now, which is great. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. So the way I kind of saw this game is that it was definitely broken into 4 parts, and I also listened to the Arsenal Vision podcast before this, and they also said the same thing. But basically, it was like the first, little section, and then the section after they got the penalty, um, this section before they got the red card, and then the section after. And I think we controlled probably 75% of that game. And I think a lot of the statistics do speak to that. I'll show you guys the field tilt here, which actually speaks to, it's exactly how the game felt in the moment, like in terms of when we were threatening and when they were threatening. And the funny thing about, like, the way that Spurs saw this game, which I did find it to be a little bit similar to how Manchester United fans felt about the game that they played against Manchester City, is that they had these chances to make chances. And so that meant that they had threat. And for me, it's like, if you didn't really connect the pass, you didn't get a shot, you didn't work the goalkeeper, that's not really a chance, you know what I mean? You can have good periods of play, but saying that you had chances is kind of disingenuous if you know that you didn't have any shots. They had one shot in open play the entire match. And so they also had 19 shots against, and 15 of those came before the red card. So they were in the game because there was a 1 goal margin before the red card, but we were very much so in command of this game for the majority of the game, except for the period right after they scored the penalty and about 10 to 15 minutes after that. And so that's exactly like what this chart basically says. It's the attacking threat when the goals came. And you can see that we were pretty dominant, pretty dominant, pretty dominant. We scored our goal in the 20 somethingth minute. They scored their goal around the 35th minute. And then, then we kind of got back because even when you watch the highlights, and like highlights are important because the highlights will kind of show you a glimpse of what happened in that game. After their penalty, when you watch the highlights, it immediately jumps to the second half because they really didn't have many chances after that. Nothing that worked the goalkeeper or got them into a position where they actually scared us. Like for me, when I thought about it and I rewatched the game, it was that initial free kick that they had that Ramsdale made an excellent save for. It was, the one moment that they got in, and we'll talk about that more. And Ramsdale kind of came out of the box, and then that's when they got the penalty. But the other chances were like, okay, hitting hopes across the box, nobody was there. That's not really a chance if nobody's in the box. They had one chance where Perisic just hit it, into the side netting. It's not really a chance, I mean, you could maybe count it, and if you're scraping, you probably would count that. And then there's the couple of times where they got to about the halfway line and Son and Richarlison could not pass the ball to save their lives. And I think beyond that, there wasn't really much there. And the rest of the game, we dominated the game from my perspective. Of course, they always have that threat and that fear factor of, okay, we can have all this dominance, but it can only take one chance for them to fly to the other end and score a goal. But that's really the case with most teams that we play, is that we have a lot of dominance. It's just if they get the chance, they have a higher percentage of scoring it because of the players that they actually have, because they're such elite level talents. But from Aston Villa to Fulham to Tottenham, all of those teams can hurt us in that one instant when they come to the other end because of how we play. Spurs just happen to have a higher percentage of making it count because of the players that they have, if that makes sense. But I do think for the most part, we were in charge of that match. We looked composed, we looked professional, and beyond the weird moment for their penalty, I thought we were really, really solid. I thought it was really, really solid. Koki Smurf says Son's passing was awful. I think the thing about Son is that he's like an elite goal scorer. Like he's definitely somebody that, you want receiving the final ball. Richarlison is that person as well. But beyond Kane, they don't have any creative players in their team. And it was it was good for us that Son and Richarlison were trying to create for Kane. Because he's not very good on the ball, to be honest. We will talk about Gabriel Laud in just a second. I just want to get through this first part. Yo-Yo said it was a typical possession versus counterattack, bravery versus cowardice. Laud says we weren't at our fluidity best against Tottenham, but still dominated and spunked them. Exactly. I thought we definitely were not as good as we could have been, but we still won the game. And with the emotions and, the nerves and the adrenaline, I do think that most derbies that mean something tend to be a little bit messier, if that makes sense. Hakum says just running towards goal isn't a chance. I said that on the football terrace. It's not, but we remember these times, and I just want to it's not to be fair to Spurs fans. It's just more to add maybe some context. Is that when we were in our moments where we didn't really score a lot of goals, any touch inside the box, any cross inside the box, any times where we were if you think about when we played against, Brighton and Burnley last season, and we just couldn't build up, we couldn't pass to each other, and those moments that we built up okay, but then the final ball wasn't good enough, we kinda counted those as chances. We talked a lot about those moments because they were our best moments in the game, but they just weren't substantial enough to actually make the opposition scared in any sort of way. So I kinda understand why they're holding on to those, but they really weren't chances. So, yeah, um, so in that kind of first period, I thought our intention was very clear in those first couple of minutes. We won the ball back from them, and you could see we did our little triangles. Odegaard was instrumental in that. A nice little 1-2s around Son and their midfielders. Gabriel Jesus takes a really good touch. We switch it out to Gabriel Martinelli. Martinelli tries to I think put in a cross. Then he also had another moment where it was going across the goal from I think from Saka, and Martinelli got it, and really good first time second time shot. It was like almost like a volley where he hit it into the ground and it went out for a corner, and you could just see our intention was to get on top of them early. I didn't really expect anything different. That's just kind of how we are. And if you kind of look at how Manchester City, and I know this is easy comparison to make, but they are the pinnacle there. You want to see what they're doing and kind of see where you kind of stand up to them. And against Manchester United at their place, at the Etihad, they kind of did something really similar. They put them under immense pressure in those first 15 to 20 minutes. And I think we tried to emulate something similar to that, but it's been very on on the pattern of how we've been this season. Martinelli, I thought, was unplayable. I thought a lot of the tracking back and a lot of the defensive work that he did, a lot of the pressing and the harrying that he did in the first half definitely got to Emerson to the point where, of course, like then he retaliated in that second half. But I thought even though Martinelli didn't get a goal, he was very instrumental in what we were doing and showed himself to be the type of player that people really need to be worried about. He's relentless. I think so what Gabriel Jesus brings to our team has definitely rubbed off on him. He was already a really hard worker, but I think he almost took it personal that Gabriel Jesus was doing the work. So he's like, I'm going to outwork you. And it's just amazing to see somebody really come into their own. So for me, Martinelli was really a standout in that first half for me in terms of what his intention was. And the other intention that I thought really stood out beyond just getting on top of them early on in the match was the shots from outside the box. And we know that shots from outside the box are not high percentage shots, but you saw that, early on, Granit Xhaka shot from outside the box, just barely whistled by the post. White took a shot from outside the box. It wasn't a great shot, but it was a shot nonetheless. And then the next long range shot that we took was Partey's goal, and that was definitely planned. Spurs were deep in their box, like, they were so deep in their box, and they showed this on Match of the Day that, like, Højbjerg and Bentancur were literally nailed to their back line. And I was like, God, that reminds me of like when we played in the FA Cup and we won. But when we played against Manchester City, that reminded me so much of Ceballos and Xhaka, just right on top of that back three. And I was like, damn, I don't miss those days. I do not miss those days. But they were so deep that they left so much time and space for Partey and Xhaka and Ben White to operate in those spaces. And finally, Partey took advantage of that. And the one thing that I do want to say about that shot that Thomas Partey took was that that was his 57th shot from outside the goal or outside the box. I think Squawka put that out. Let me see if I can. Thomas Partey has attempted 57 shots outside the box in the Premier League for Arsenal. He was saving the goal for the North London Derby, is what they said. 57 shots, 10 on target, 1 goal. And, it was frustrating watching him do the shoot it over into the stands. And, it's just for that one moment that he actually got it right. And he got it right at the perfect time. And so I have nothing to complain about. But the build up for the goal, the perfection of the goal, the fact that they thought if they limited the space in the box for Arsenal to operate and do those little 1-2s, limit the space for Gabriel Jesus and Martinelli and Saka and Odegaard, that we wouldn't have anything for them. Of course, on another day, Thomas Partey doesn't score, but on our day, that was our day, and it did go in. So, yeah, I really did like our game plan. Get on top of them, say this is how we're going to play, and then even though they're packed in their box, take long range shots to either draw them out or eventually we get something from it. See what you guys are saying. Rashid says Spurs were not bad. We made them look bad. Totally annihilated Conte's system. Zach 10 Football says there's only two things holding Martinelli back from a World Cup spot. He needs to get his head up for greater awareness and needs to be more clinical. Yeah, I mean, I think Martinelli just for me, because you look at Brazil and you just think they have just so much talent, and so I'm not sure that Martinelli not getting a spot is due to anything that he's doing per se. I just think sometimes there's a hierarchy, and there's players that are in front of him that have kind of been in and around the team a little bit longer than him, and so yeah, like for Martinelli, he definitely has things to work on for sure, but he's definitely getting closer. He's getting a lot closer. Lone Star says Martinelli was excellent yesterday. Daniel says a lot of South American players are hardworking and never stop. Sanchez was the same for Arsenal, just afraid they will tire themselves out. Glad Arteta took Jesus off. Let's see. Jack says Ben White, Odegaard, Saliba, Jesus, Partey, all irreplaceable. iGamer says Partey been trying to score that goal for 2 years. What a match to get it right. Akal says Crispy Rise true. Odegaard was average, just finished watching the replay. He should buck up and justify captaincy. So, I don't think Odegaard had a great game yesterday, but I also think that, and I think your feelings are justified, and I think we all could see with our own 2 eyes that Odegaard didn't have an amazing game, but Spurs did a good job nullifying him. I think they did a good job, keeping him from getting into his pockets. They were really physical with him and made it difficult for him to, and on another day, some of those challenges that they put in through the back of Odegaard are called for fouls. I don't think they were called because Anthony Taylor was trying to let things go, and so, on some days, Odegaard is the star, and other games, it's Saka. Other games, it's Partey. Other games, it's Saliba. And so I think that we're so used to certain players being stars, Odegaard and Saka in particular, when they're not at 100% or they have like a 7 out of 10 game, we're like, what's going on? They just weren't the star today. And I think Odegaard had a not a star today type of game. And yeah, I don't think it's like anything wrong with him. It just wasn't his day. And sometimes that happens. O'Malley says Ben White should have had 2 assists if Jesus hadn't missed that header. White is in the top 3 in form right back right now. Ben White is so underrated. It's actually ridiculous. I mean, he just makes it look so easy, and he's keeping a very good right back out of our team because Tomiyasu is no slouch. So, yeah, I think Ben White deserves a lot of credit. BroPro says we just need to get used to the level of technicality of Odegaard. It's just he didn't walk out with GA. The one thing that I think he did have some good moments in the game. I just felt like there was like a couple of moments where I think he could have just kept it simple and he tried to do something a little bit too fancy. But again, I think he had a 7 out of 10 game where there was probably 5 players that had 8, 9, 10 out of 10 games. And so, yeah, it was just one of those. Akum says Ben White has really grown on me. I think he's grown on a lot of people. So yeah, I think that first period we were really on top of them, and once we scored the goal, I was like, okay, cool, we got the goal because I think we all also understand that the first goal was so important in that game. Had we had not gotten that first goal, I think it would have been a completely different game because they could have sat in a little bit more. Maybe the nervousness would have taken over. But we got the first goal. We put our intentions out there on the table, and I think we cruised really well until we got to the penalty. And so there were moments in that first half where I do think that we could have slowed things down. And where the penalty came from for me was as complimentary as I will be for Martinelli and Saka because I do think they were really good. I think in the first half, what they suffered from was just one too many dribbles. I think you saw Martinelli and Saka lose the ball a couple of times where they're really reliable on the ball. So I'm not saying that they're they lose the ball all the time, but I'm used to them being so reliable. And I thought that they tried to dribble one, two, three, and then lost it. And then for that goal, Saka made a really good move. And then he tried to over dribble. The ball got taken away from him. They passed it into Son, I think. And I thought Thomas Partey was weak on transition there. He needed to either make the tackle or pull Son down. Now I know that that's really risky because he probably would have gotten a yellow card for it, but it probably would have eliminated that chance altogether. And then, Son makes the pass to Richarlison. It's a terrible pass. Ramsdale comes out of his box. I know what he was trying to do. I'm not sure if that was the right thing to do. You guys can let me know. They try to trip it over him. He hits it. Saliba heads it out. And then there's kind of like this bobbly, uncomfortable, clumsy moment between Xhaka and Gabriel. And Xhaka tries to, I think, tippy-tappy just a little bit too much in our box, didn't get a good enough control on it. Gabriel tries to make the tackle on Richarlison and kicks him down. It's a penalty. There's nothing really to complain about there. But I do sense that there's a undercurrent of, you know, frustration around Gabriel. And you guys know how I feel about Gabriel. I feel for what he gives us, the pros definitely outweigh the cons. But the mistakes are coming a lot faster than they were before. He was somebody that before, from the beginning of last season, pretty much like when he came back into the team to about January, he was unplayable. And then he had the red card against Manchester City, and I thought his form got spotty after that. Remember the Wolves back pass, that was bad. And then coming into this season, he's had two moments, I would say, the Fulham goal and this one were probably ones that you could put out there. But I would say the Fulham one was more of something that I really attribute to him and being kind of, not really turned on in the moment. This one is, he went for it and he missed it. It was a penalty. And Gabriel is somebody that my take on Gabriel is that he has those moments in him because he's more rash than other players that we have. He's not as rash. He's more rash than Ben White. He's more rash than Saliba. But I do think you need players in your team that are willing to be aggressive and have that edge. I don't think you can have two Salibas. I think you have to have an aggressor and a calmer person in that back line. And together, that's a really, really good combination. I do not think that Ben White and Saliba would be an ideal partnership because they don't have the yin and the yang. They don't have the it doesn't it's not balanced for me. And so I get that Gabriel has these moments, but I do feel like some Arsenal fans forget that Gabriel is doing a completely different job than William Saliba. William Saliba has Ben White next to him, who's basically a center back in a really, really good one in his own right. Somebody that's pretty much in that space all the time. Then you have on the other side, we are wide open on that side because Zinchenko, one, is not a great defender. Think about this. Gabriel last season either had to play with Tierney in bad form or Nuno that was like, who knows, and whoever was on the right side usually had the better player, whether it was Tomiyasu or whoever. And so on the left side this season, although Zinchenko is an amazing player, he's just somebody that's going to be so far up and doesn't have the ability to one get back or defend really one-on-one that I do think we ask more of Gabriel than we do of William Saliba. And so of course he gets caught out a little bit more and maybe he should think a little bit more and be a little bit more calm, but I think that's also his aggression is what makes him such a good defender. It's why he pockets Kane every time he plays against Kane. It's why he's the defender that we love and why he's been our best defender before a world-class defender came into our team. So for me, Gabriel, I think he still has more pros than cons. I think, you know, what I don't like is the getting getting it caught underneath your foot for the Mitrovic goal, but the penalty is something that I look at it and I think there were so many mistakes before that that it's kind of like, yeah, I'm mad that, he didn't get the perfect tackle on it, but I do think we're a little bit harsh on Gabriel. Do I still think that we need to bring somebody in? Yeah, I do think we need to bring somebody in, another left-sided center back so that we can have somebody that he could play against, so that he can have some competition for his spot. I think those things obviously need to happen, but do we need to like get rid of Gabriel? Is he the worst thing ever? Absolutely not. I think he's a really, really good player. And I think with Tomiyasu potentially coming in to play left-sided center back, which is what I hope against maybe Bodo Glimt or in the Europa League, we'll see Gabriel get to take more rest. But for me, Gabriel does more good than bad. And there's so many things that he does on the ball that are they're so underrated that I don't see people talking about, the things that he does on the ball, the balls in between the lines that he puts through, the goals that he scores for us. Um, he's just somebody that I'm not willing to stick the boot into and act like we need to move on from. I think we need another center back to just get that quartet together. But I don't think we need to be looking at Gabriel as like somebody that needs to be moved on, which is definitely something that I've seen over the last couple of weeks. And it's hard to look really good against William Saliba. Let's put it out there. Everybody's gonna pale in comparison. So there you go. Kenneth says, Austin Trusty. Yeah, I'm watching him. I'm watching him. And then so yeah, Law, that kind of answers your question. For me, it's definitely something that's there, but I think Clive said it best on the Arsenal Vision podcast is that he's a Martin Keown. He's a Martin Keown, and Keown had moments, but you had to have Keown in there as well because it's the fear factor. It's the guy that's gonna get stuck in. It's the guy that's gonna fly through the back of somebody, and so for me, I think Saliba and Gabriel do have the perfect yin and yang, and I'm not sure that I believe that having 2 really calm guys back there is really what we need. We need the fear factor and we need the calm guy, and those 2 things together make the perfect combination. Um, IB or Ibby says, I love that comparison with Keown. I didn't come up with it. It was definitely Clive, but it's 100% true. If you ever watch Keown play, he was definitely that guy. Blaze says, I don't think we should blame only Gabriel for the penalties. Some players played bad when Son had the ball. Saka shouldn't have lost the ball, but some fans won't say. That's me. Like I really look back at that goal and I said Saka over dribbled. Partey was weak in transition. Ramsdale, I don't know what he was doing, but he was kind of in no man's land. I think that incited a little bit of panic there. And then Xhaka, and we saw it, like there was reports today that Xhaka said that it was his responsibility, that he made the mistake for the penalty happening. So I just think, yeah, like with Gabrielle, I'm not quite at that place where I'm like, oh my gosh, he's a liability. Like I'm just not there. Even though I think some people are. Daniel says, yeah, Keown, I can see that good comparison. Travelli says Xhaka's touch was rough. It was rough. Um, Cliff says for the pen, Xhaka should have cleared the ball. I agree. We were trying to be too cute and it didn't work out. He took a bad touch and Gabriel, rushed in and, you know, Bro Pro says, can you compare Xhaka and Gabriel in a sense? They're good, but the bozo moments make them worse than they actually are. Um, Yeah, potentially, potentially. I think they have their moments, but they're also the players that are willing to put themselves on the line. They're the players that we don't talk about the last ditch efforts that they make. We don't talk about the times that they save our ass. Like we don't talk about that. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, I've seen Xhaka do some things that I'm like, he wasn't there. I don't know what would have happened. So I really do think that like, and here's the thing is when you're playing well, you can absorb some of these moments because you're not playing in the fine margins all the time. And we won't always have these luxuries. There'll be games where we're playing against the best of the best and the game is tighter. And those moments of madness, those moments where we're not 100%, they will cost us and we'll talk about them a lot more. But because we don't play on the margins and we try to score 2, 3, 4 goals a game and we have a lot of possession and our players are, really, really trying and they can add things in the final third that they couldn't add before, I do think you can stomach a little bit of more of these. You could stomach these a little bit more when you're only scoring one goal a game, and you're kind of shoddy at the back. Those things stand out a lot more. So I think that's just kind of where we're at. Crispy Rice says their positives outweigh the negatives. Most good players are like this. I agree. Toby says Gabriel Jesus is a beast. He is. Why big white clock says if Gabrielle is your biggest problem, you've got nothing to worry about. And I think that's the best way to end the Gabrielle segment. There's 175 of you guys in here. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, you guys, for being here. I do really appreciate it. So, after the penalty, I do think that Spurs, that's where their best moments came. And we talked about what those moments were. They weren't necessarily anything that were super troubling. It was just they were that one good pass away for potentially really giving us problems. But I think one player that squashed a lot of their hope, especially in those moments, was definitely William Saliba. He had an excellent game yesterday, as usual. And he's just somebody that we need to sign the ting. Like, we're seeing levels from him that you don't see very often. I think he's going to be right up there with the best of the best. And yeah, I thought his composure, it wasn't even just like the nutmeg, which was crazy. It was just he made their attacks just end. That he bodied Richarlison, he bodied Kane, he got on them. And so, I mean, Saliba versus Tottenham, 100% aerial duels won, 100% take-ons completed, 96 pass accuracy, 79 touches, 71 passes, 11 ball recoveries, 6 passes into the final third for a center back, 5 duels won, 3 tackles made, 3 clearances, and 0 times dribbled past. I mean, that was a really, really good game from William Saliba, and I don't like he's so smooth, and I thought the way he just closed their attacks and was just like, "No," every single time, "No." I loved it, and so Saliba, I think, was key in those moments where, you know, their attacks look like they could have been gaining some traction just to kind of calm things down and say, "Nope, you're not gonna do it today." Saliba was excellent yesterday as well. The day before yesterday. Jasper says Saliba is playing at prime VVD levels at the moment, but it's hard to say that loud. I'm a little apprehensive about making comparisons so early on because he's still very young, and so I don't want to put those things out there, but he's playing at a level where I do think that we're not going to see another player like this come up in the market. And if we do, that player is going to be out of our price range. We bought William Saliba for 27 million. At the level that he's playing at right now, he's probably worth over 100 something million. I mean, if that's what Fofana goes for, then that's what William Saliba goes for. And so it's so important to get him signed onto that new deal. Richie says Saliba is already world class at just 21. Hard to believe he will stay with us beyond the next contract. So we must get it done to get the full value when he eventually leaves for Madrid or Paris. Exactly. Like that's where I'm at. I mean, things can change. He could fall in love with Arsenal, and we could be so. And in that time where we have Saliba and we have Martinelli and we have Saka and, hopefully we do get into the Champions League, we can take Arsenal to another level where we can extend the time that we have these players a little bit more. I think achievement is so important with these players to keep them around longer than if we're just kind of swimming around in mediocrity. We're a good team, but not a great team. So yeah, let's see. Ibby says, I don't think I've seen someone be surrounded by 3 players in his own box and just calmly walk out with the ball like it's nothing. His calmness is just insanity. What are they feeding him? I don't know, but he's just so good. Like, it's crazy. And thinking back to when we first got him, I was obsessed. I was like, I watched so many compilations because I just couldn't believe we bought a player like this. And he was 18 at the time. And I was like, look, oh my gosh, he's so good. This is insane. And to wait this long to have to see him, I think for me has been almost worth it because I feel like he's obviously stepped into it and he's ready. And Arsenal are in a period where he doesn't have to live with playing with Mustafi and playing with the mistakes and being under the pressure and being in Banter FC, he can come into an Arsenal team that's on the up and play next to Gabriel, and it just works. And so for me, like, watching Saliba is just like a freaking dream. Like, it's a dream, you know? So yeah. Now, after halftime, I do feel like we got our control back. And I think this is where the mentality aspect of things really did come in for me, is we kept possession. We attacked them again. Thomas Partey did go up a level, in my opinion, in the second half. I thought he controlled the game and the tempo a lot better in the second half. And we just looked calm, and we didn't look rattled by the fact that it was 1-1. And I think that's where the difference really came in for Arsenal. I think we were a lot more mature in this game, where we weren't as mature in the Man United game or in other big games in the past. And so the mentality was key for that. You could see it from the minute that the second half started, that beyond the what they tried with the Romero coming through and Saliba cleaned that up, we were completely in control from that moment on. Also, something else that they pointed out in The Athletic, I think, was that Ben White also became a sixth attacker. So instead of kind of staying retracted next to Thomas Partey and staying in that midfield line, he actually became a sixth attacker and did a lot more overlapping, and that overloaded Spurs a lot more. And I think when you're playing and you're under pressure, and again, they conceded 19 shots against us, which that's high. That's high. That's not a low amount of shots. It was 22 shots to 7, 9 shots on target. And so when you're being worked and you don't have possession, it tires you out physically and mentally. And I think we started to wear them down. And Ben White was a big part of that, because then they had to think, should I go with Ben White? Should I stick with Saka? We can't just double team Saka anymore. We have to make decisions. And I think that's where they started to lose a little bit of their grip. And then when the second goal came, I think the most important part of that is that we didn't have Martinelli and Saka still trying to dribble, dribble, dribble. Saka took a shot, and it was a rocket, and Lloris bobbled it, and Jesus was on top of it. And that second goal was the type of goal that Arsenal were not getting last season, because we didn't take enough shots, we didn't take enough risks, and we didn't have a striker sniffing around in the box to make those chances into goals. And those are the goals that we really were missing out on last season. If it wasn't a um a set piece or a perfectly constructed goal, we didn't get the Lloris bobble goal. And that's where Gabriel Jesus, I think, really makes the difference for us. We know that, he has the skills, and he had so many moments where I thought, oh, if he had just, he had that one where he went past Emerson and then went past Romero and then shot, and then Lloris had the good reaction save. We know he can do all those things, but I think he was so underrated in terms of being a goal scorer that people didn't think that he had the right place, right time gene. And he has that. And that goal was quintessential striker, right place, right time. And it was exactly what we needed, because it came in the 49th minute and it put us back on top. And then we completely, like, from that moment, I think we were in the ascendancy, like, for the rest of the game. That second goal was so, so important. Travelli says they dropped points twice, still trying to stop KDB. Yikes. Let's see. Rashid says shoot and get rebounds. I mean, those are things that we weren't getting last season, and people can make it seem like whatever. It's not important. It's obviously not as good. It's not as, impressive as the goals that Thomas Partey scored or Vieira scored the other day, but it is just as important, because those goals add up. And so you can say shoot and get rebounds, but those are the types of striker goals that go unnoticed. It's not always the worldies. Sometimes you just have to get the little bobbles that come out. Ransford says you have not been consistent with new videos, more love. I haven't been as consistent, and the reason for that is because I also have a job, and I'm trying to create more content on other platforms, and so I'm not as, like, every single day creating content on this platform. I am trying, but yeah, I'm sorry I'm not as consistent, but, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. iGamer says facts. Jesus scores all types of goals. That's so important. It's so important. iGamer says we score tap-ins, screamers, headers. We get it in exactly. And also, probably should have had a penalty. I still look back on that opportunity that we had right before the Gabriel Jesus missed header. Is that looked like a penalty to me? They didn't show it over and over and over again, which for me also was a little bit shady. I'm like, why didn't I see that again? But it looked like we probably should have got a penalty as well. So we score tap-ins, penalties, screamers, headers. When we get the penalties, we score them. So yeah, exactly. So Gabriel Jesus has really made the difference for us. I think, you know, obviously people had worries about whether or not he was enough of a target, whether or not he had enough physicality, but I think he's making those people look silly. Gabriel Jesus game by the numbers versus Tottenham, the most shots on target, the most touches in the opposition box, the most duels won, the most fouls won. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but even Gabriel Jesus was defending. He was back in our box winning tackles. And the guy is just, he has been the difference. Like he has been the difference. And Zinchenko is amazing. Don't get me wrong, but it's been Jesus. Don't get it twisted. So yeah, love, love, love what Gabriel Jesus brought to this game. He was excellent. So once we scored that goal, I wasn't 100% confident, but I did feel like we moved into that next level. Like we were controlling possession, they really weren't touching it as much. And then once we got to the 66th minute, I called this part Conte waves the white flag because in the 66th minute the penalty came. Not the penalty, the red card. And on the first time I looked at it, I have to say, you guys, I didn't actually think it was a red card. I was actually shocked that he gave it to us. I thought I just because it seems so it was so here and there, like it wasn't like a big slide tackle or anything else. But when I looked at it again and you look at it, from the other angles, I mean, he wasn't going for the ball. I think that was the main thing is I wish that Anthony Taylor and the referees needed to be mic'd up or they needed to give reasonings for this because I would really like to know what he thought. If he thought that one, it's high, two, it studs up. Um, and this is somebody that had fouled quite a bit of times already. And then it was kind of not from it was he was coming from a place and looking in a certain direction where one, it didn't look like he was going for the ball, and two, he could not get the ball. And so I think that's where where they got it from. And I also saw this that, Van Dyke made this tackle the other day on in the Everton gets high, but it's more straight on. And so that was for me a red card, even though he didn't get one. For Emerson Royale, he got that red card. And I think some of this was people like it was all the ingredients to make it into something that needed to have a decision, whether it was a yellow card or a red card. I think what tipped it off is that he had already kind of been fouling and he has the bozo reputation. That's what I think it is. We know what it's like to have a player in your team that I think has a reputation. I think that's just what tipped it over the edge. But what I found interesting about this is that when people were debating whether or not they thought it was a red, two things is that, you know, the it ruined the spectacle. It ruined the spectacle. It ruined the spectacle. And I think Anthony Taylor in, the majority of the gameplay, he let things go. So there was a couple of times where Partey shoved somebody over, Richarlison shoved somebody over, Kane, um, Hoiberg. Like there was a lot of moments where in other games those would have been fouls, but because it was a North London derby, it wasn't called. When it comes to red card level tackles or things that could potentially send you off and situations in both boxes, that's where it can't be called differently. That's where it has to just be what it is. And I think to say that Emerson should have stayed on because it was a North London derby and those tackles should be okay. It's the fact that it's high, it's from behind, he wasn't going for the ball, and it was dangerous. And so, no, those should never be okay, not even in a derby. But the shoves, those types of those things are okay not to give yellow cards for. Those things are play ons, especially if it goes in both directions. And I think what really was the best part about this is that there was nothing that Spurs fans could have on the opposite end where they could say, well, why wasn't this a red card? Because we didn't have any of those. We didn't have any moments where Anthony Taylor let it go for us, but then he called a red card for them here. And so for me, it was a red card when you looked at it again. And on American commentary, they were saying that there was debate around it. It could be debated on whether or not it was a red card. And the reality is that there's a lot of red cards that are given that have the tag of being debatable. And the fact that it's debatable means it's not a clear and obvious error by the referee. And that's why they don't overturn them, is because it's from his vantage point, the referee in the middle that has been in the game, feeling the temperature of the game, understanding where the players are at mentally at that point in the game. He could make the decision from what he saw on whether or not it was a red card tackle. So for him, it was. For another referee, it may not have been. But the fact that there was debate means for me that it was not a clear and obvious error. And so for anybody that's upset that it wasn't overturned or anything like that, if it's not a clear and obvious error, it can't be overturned. So the fact that it was debatable, you just have to go with the on-field decision. And I think that's what they did. And so, yeah, for me, I don't believe in the spectacle nonsense. Even when it comes to us, I think for me, Rob Holding deserved the red card that he got because he was silly against Spurs. I thought when we played against Manchester City and Gabriel got his red card, ironically, against Gabriel Jesus, I thought it was a red card because it was silly. And I thought we gave the referee a decision to make, and we shouldn't have done that. He gave the referee a decision to make, and Anthony Taylor felt like it was a red card. Another referee probably didn't think that. In other situations, it would be considered soft, but we've seen soft red cards given before. And that is the payment for having anything that has humans involved in it. It's never going to be cut and dry. It's never going to be black and white because subjectiveness is always going to come into play. And this is probably a subjective red card. For some, it will be soft. For some, it's clear. But for Anthony Taylor, it was a red. And so it is what it is. So, yeah, red card for me. Red card for me, but I can understand why people see it soft. What did you guys think about it in real time? What did you guys think about it in real time? Did you think it was a red card? Did you think it wasn't? Think it was harsh? I also, understand that people will say, well, because the red card happened, it changed the game and, it was in the balance. Of course it was in the balance. When you're only so when there's could be 2 games that end 2-1, but they can be completely different games and be completely different, interpreted so differently. And I don't think this 2-1 was like a close 2-1, like, it was back and forth, and it was not on a knife edge, and it wasn't really in the balance. We were clearly dominant in that period. Of course, at 2-1 with 11v11, they could hypothetically have come down the pitch and gotten another penalty or scored, but the likelihood that being true based on the way that they were playing and based on the way that we're playing, I don't think was actually realistic. But you can make that argument, but it's neither here nor there because the red card happened. He gave the referee a decision to make, and at that point, Conte waved the white flag and decided that the game was done, especially after our third goal. Ibby says, straight red, ankle breaker. It was a foul where I wouldn't have minded if you showed a yellow, but understood him showing a red. Ray DeGooner says, is it a soft because he didn't break his leg? I don't get these guys. People are saying it's soft because it's Arsenal. And they wanted the game to continue on the way that it was going. I don't know. But no, really, I think because he wasn't sliding through or anything. And yeah, I think that's more what it is. And I think the key to this is I'm sure that Martinelli was hurt, but I like that he rolled around a little bit more and made sure that the referee looked at it and stopped the game, because if he had just gotten up, they may have just been like, whatever. But because he rolled around a little bit more and made it known that hey, this was a bad tackle, I think that helped. Elliot Roberts says dangerous tackle to the ankle, could have been broken, tackled nowhere near the ball, red card. And the thing is he could have never gotten to the ball. The only way he would have gotten to the ball is if he had went through Martinelli. And when you look at him, he's not even looking at the ball. He's looking at Martinelli's ankle. And I think he was retaliating based on the fact that he was getting ripped all game long. And so, yeah, it's a red card. Um, Nketiah's got a red remember. I remember that. He came straight on, and you could tell it wasn't intentional. He was looking at the ball. He raked down somebody's shin against Leicester and got a red card. I remember that. I remember all the red cards that we got. I remember the Aubameyang one. They looked at it and looked at it and looked at it and looked at it until it was a red card. And because of that reason, I'm never really that sympathetic to other teams when they get red cards against us, because I've seen us get a lot of red cards where they were subjective and there was debate and it didn't go our way. So, yeah. So that's pretty much what how I feel about that. And then we moved into, where we scored our goal. We scored quite, fast after that. Xhaka's goal, I thought it was a really good goal. Thomas Partey uh, progressed the ball, passed it into Martinelli. Martinelli kind of dropped it off to Xhaka. Xhaka slammed it in the back of the net. 3-1, game done. Conte then showed his cowardice and made 4 subs in the 71st minute, basically signaling to the world that the game is done now and there's no point in continuing on. And I spoke to a lot of Spurs fans. I heard a lot of Spurs fans speaking about how they felt that that was wrong. And they understand that they have Champions League in midweek, but it's a North London derby. And even at 3-1, they felt like he should have tried to continue on because there was still time left. And I think for him, he was like, I'm just going to go into the red card, killed the game. So I'm just going to end it here. I think, and so that he could save face. But I do think that was cowardice. In a North London derby, you have to continue on regardless of what's going on in midweek. And I thought that was pretty pathetic from him, to be honest. And then we got to see some of our own management where we took out Thomas Partey, which was great, and saw Sambi came in, Odegaard came off, Vieira came on, Jesus came off, and Nketiah came on, White came off, and Tomiyasu came on, and Tierney came on for Zinchenko, and we didn't really skip a beat. I know that game state definitely has a part to play in that, but we got to give some of our boys some rest, and Sammy Mukbel, who's pretty reliable, put out a long article about Arsenal today and what he kind of knows about the situation. And he said that, let me see if I can find it, that we can expect to see Arteta rest key players during the group stages of the tournament as he prioritizes the Premier League. And so I think that kind of backs up the theory that we're going to see maybe completely different 11s, at least at the start, barring a couple of players like Xhaka in these early stages. And so this is a good thing, getting Thomas Partey off of the pitch early, getting Zinchenko off of the pitch, getting White, getting our really important players off and getting other players on is so, so important in this month of October. And so I love to see us being able to manage our, our games and our time as well, like Tottenham was doing. And it was really good to see. It was really good to see. I thought Sambi had a nice little cameo there. I thought Nketiah did as well, and it was great. High Gamer said Conte waved the lily white flag. He did. Macau says the red card looks soft to me, but after seeing it in slow motion in replay, it was a clear red. No pundit would have talked about it if it had been Xhaka. God, I wish I could show you guys. I'll show it to you guys because I really hope it doesn't get copyright. But I made this on TikTok and I thought it was so clever. You guys can tell me I'm lame. You guys should follow me on TikTok and on Instagram because I'm putting up more content. You guys can let me know if I'm lame or not. Let's see if you guys. You guys see it? Can you guys see that? I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but yeah, I made that. So you guys can tell me I'm lame. But yeah, it's a problem when he does it, but it's not a problem when other people do it. And so yeah, if that had been Xhaka, he definitely would have gotten a red card. You guys can't see it, but yeah, you guys just find me on TikTok. I'll put my thing on here. If you guys are on there, then you guys can just look at it there. It's just see just Justino. So you guys can look at it there, whatever. So, yeah, but I thought he just waved the white flag. We got a chance to do some of our management, and it was great. Like, I thought I felt so relaxed after that 3rd goal went in. And so that was pretty much the game. I thought we managed it well. It was professional performance. We showed our mentality. We were clinical when we needed to be. Our players stepped up. The players that we knew needed to step up. I know I spoke about um, Thomas Partey being the difference and Gabriel Jesus, and I do think that the two of them really did step up in this moment. And so now we move into midweek. So a couple of things that I want to touch on just before we get out of here is just, some of the news that has come out that today. Um, this is coming from Sammy Muckbell as well, that you can also expect the wheels to start moving on an improved contract for Martinelli in the not too distant future. He is fast emerging as one of the most important players in Arteta's team. There's confidence from Arsenal that a deal for Saka to extend by at least a further 3 or 4 years can be struck, a contract that has been formally um, a contract has been formally, which would guarantee close to £200,000 a week, a huge amount for a 21-year-old. Don't care. You need to give him what he's worth. You pay players not based on their age. You play them based on how important they are to your team. And so it doesn't matter how old Saka's been playing or how old Saka is, because let's be real, like, he's came into the team at 18 and he was already like the most important player in our team. So it is what it is. Arsenal are also keen to extend William Saliba's contract. It's a priority. And there was another little blip on that with Saliba. Let me find it. Sorry, you guys. That this is coming from John Cross. He said William Saliba has revealed that he has held like preliminary talks about his new contract after insisting he is so happy. Saliba said, "Yeah, we will see." They talk a little bit. We will see. And so, I mean, obviously his agents can hold out for as long as possible because they hold a lot of the they hold the keys to this. Like, they're in a very good position in terms of negotiating. And so I do think Saliba wants to stay. I do think that there's no indication that he doesn't want to be at Arsenal. It's just, don't expect him to sign a small contract. Like, he's going to have to be paid handsomely for his talent. And so I can see this going on a little bit longer. He also needs to make that World Cup squad. And I think once that's set in stone, we'll see a little bit more of this. And so this move a little bit more. So yeah, for me, the 3 of those players are so important: Saliba, Saka, and Martinelli, because they're the future. As young as they are, they're so important to our team, and there's no real replacement for them at the moment. So, yeah, I think that's really, really good news. And the other little blip that I wanted to put out there is that Arsenal intend to spend again in January with a new midfielder on the radar. And that's from Sammy Muckbell. He's very, very reliable. And so all the news that I wanted to hear, we're going to spend in January, potentially. You never know with Arsenal. The 3 players that we're looking to get them on new deals, that's in the works, and we won. And there's a lot of stuff that came out today about the physios, about the mentality of the team, Granit Xhaka, a lot of things. There's a lot of things that have come out, so keep your eye out. But yeah, it's been great hearing some of this stuff. Frank Gunner says, if we want the best, we've got to pay for the best. BroPro says Marquinhos plays in Saka's spot. Yeah, but for me, Marquinhos hasn't really proved that he's as good as Saka. Like, when I say somebody that can replace them, I mean somebody who steps in and there's no drop off. And so, as good as, Marquinhos has played in the Europa League for like one match, like, let's not sit here and act like he's on the level of Bukayo Saka. Abdel Rahman says the huddle after Partey's goal speaks volumes. It does. And so, yeah, we move into this week feeling confident. And I think it was so important for us to get this win before we play Liverpool, because you guys know how I feel. We have to get something. If you can't beat Liverpool now in the form that they're in, when are you going to beat them? And so I think it's a mental block with Arsenal when it comes to Liverpool. And so I expect to see a really rotated squad for the um Bodo Glimt game at home, and then we move into the weekend, and I wanna see our strongest possible lineup, and I wanna see us beat Liverpool. It's not a free hit, they're not playing well. We need to get something from that game. We need to leave here with something. Ali, A says, "Big up, Jess. As a Liverpool fan, you guys are doing great this season. I'm worried about going up against you guys next time." Well, we'll see soon enough what happens, you know? iGamer says the sky's the limit for this Arsenal squad. We should invest in January and go all out. So I want to see what happens in October, but I'll tell you guys this is that there could be an opportunity this season. There's already an opportunity to make sure that we solidify ourselves in the top four. But if for some reason the other opportunity, you guys know what I'm talking about, becomes something that we could potentially throw our hat into the ring for, the only way we can do it is if we reinforce in January. And I want to see Arsenal not think about the future so much and think about the present, because I think it would have been massive for us to make top four last season. It would be massive for us to push for the title this season if that's where we're at. And I'm not saying we're as good as Man City. I'm not saying anything. What I'm saying is when there's opportunities, I want to see Arsenal try to capitalize them in the moment and not always, you know, push for the future, and that's all I have to really say about that. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this with you guys. There's 200 of you guys watching. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram. Make sure that you guys tune into the Football Terrace at 6 p.m. for the Top 6 show. I will be on there. There'll be Spurs fans, there'll be Man United fans, there will be me, and we'll be talking about all the games this weekend. So make sure you guys tune in for that. The next show will be on Wednesday. I'm not as daily as I've been before. You guys, I love this platform and I love you guys. And so I am sorry that I can't be as every day as I was before, but trust me, I haven't forgot about you guys and I do appreciate all of your support. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this with a friend, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.